But Eddie Capparucci is based in Atlanta. He specializes in treating sexual and pornography addictions. He has many clients in the public arena. He also works with as a clinical director for the National Decency Coalition, an organization working with state governments to help limit the access of pornography to minors. He participates in a number of other websites and ministries. He's spoken to numerous organizations regarding the harmful impact pornography has had on individuals, relationships, and society. Last time, Eddie spoke to us on his book, and the book is on our website, livingwithoutlust.com, if you want to order a copy. It's a wonderful book, Going Deeper, How the Inner Child Impacts Your Sexual Addiction. When I read that, there's a number of scenarios and storylines that would dovetail with many of our stories from our early childhood. I identify particularly with 3 or 4 of those. Very helpful. I've recommended it to a number of guys in the program. He's also written another book, Removing Your Shame Label. So we've asked Eddie to come back again today, and he's going to speak to us on an important topic, and that is self-care and structure in recovery. Now, many of us have gone through the chaos and the disassociation and the distancing of addiction. And so now we're called to live another life. And part of that life is building in to our life those kinds of healthy rhythms and structures. So Eddie, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll open it up for questions once you're finished with your presentation. And I am going to make you a co-host, if I can figure out how to do that. For some reason, it doesn't want to let, there we go. I'm going to make you the co-host right now so you can share your screen.
Right. Well, I don't have a presentation for you guys today. I'm just talking. So so you're gonna have to look at my mug all the whole time we're here. Thanks for that great setup, Jay, because you're right. The whole idea is that once we go through the process of recovery, all right, and what I mean by that is that I learned to manage my addiction. Your recovery doesn't end. Recovery continues to go on and on. Recovery is lifelong. And for many of us, we don't really grasp that concept very well. We are still very much of the mindset of, okay, well, I know the things I need to do from this behavioral standpoint, but I keep doing everything else the same. And that's not really the best way of approaching lifelong recovery. And I'll give you a great example of what's going on right now, this whole COVID situation that we look at, what's happening here. We have people who have been, in recovery for long periods of time, and not just from a sexual or pornography addiction standpoint, but we're talking about alcohol, drugs, gambling, you name it, across the board. What we've seen from COVID thus far, there's been a spike in overdose-related deaths, or emergency calls have been reported across the U.S. We've seen alcohol sales increase 55%, when they tracked it from March of last year to March of this year, and that's an extremely high rate. And in fact, I just was reading an article this morning saying that women have been, using 3 to 4 times more alcohol during this time frame. There's a study by the by Wellbeing Trust and the American Academy of Family Physicians that estimate that there's going to be 150,000 people who are going to die because of despair from drugs, alcohol, or suicide, all because of this. We look at the discussion boards that are out there for recovery, because I like to glance and see what's going on. I've been stunned by the number of individuals who have relapsed since this all has, taken place beginning in March. In fact, even several of my clients have gone through relapse in themselves. So the question, why? Why is this happening? Well, I mean, think about what happened. We've had job losses. We've had financial issues. There's just the fear of the unknown, the death, the sickness, the fear of the unknown. When is this all going to end? When is it going to go back to normal? Will it ever go back to normal? So therefore, but one of the biggest triggers that we've had, though, is the sense of isolation. Here we were working we were in the workplace, or we're out in our community, even our support meetings, and now people have been at home, and the support network is not really as strong as it used to be. And that has been a major struggle for many people. And I want to share with you a story of one of my clients. Name is Ted. I'll use Ted as his name. He went through a period of time. I've been working with him for almost 3 years. Um, and he's been sober he was sober for 2 years and 6 months. We got to the point where I was actually just seeing him maybe monthly about other things, about different stresses in his life and such. Well, COVID comes, and now he's out of his office environment. He's home. He is out of his support groups. He's home. There are other support networks he had that were community groups, such as Bible studies and things that are no longer existing. He finds that he has more time on his hands than he really needs to know what to do with, because he can't walk down the hall to talk to somebody if he has a chance for a break. And so instead, he's just sitting there on his computer. Now, he was a guy who he would go to massage parlors quite often. But what was happening here now is that he started looking at pornography because he was bored to death by everything. And plus, he had all the various worries, some of the things that we were discussing and talked about. When he came in for his monthly checkup with me, he was not honest. He did not tell me that this was going on. Finally, his wife picking up his phone one day and looking and found images on it. She had done amazing work to forgive him for his transgressions toward her, and and now she is crushed. She is absolutely crushed. He, about, I guess it was 2.5 months ago, came out and came back and told me, "Look, I've lied to you. This is what's been going on." That we've gone back to square one. I mean, I know what the problem is. The problem became that, if it wasn't for COVID, he most likely would not have gotten into this position, because he did have some good structure in his life. But still, it's a great demonstration to show you, if that structure is not in place and the self-care is not in place, everything can collapse with that. So anyway, we look at, when we're involved in the world of addiction, what we're talking about here is our life is out of control. I think you'll all agree with that, right? There's the lying and the deceit that happens. There's the difficulty of even trying sometimes to keep track of all the lying that we're doing. It's like we're keeping two worlds apart. We're keeping the world that we want to show our family, our friends, and other people, and then we have the world, that we want to keep in the dark, that we don't want anyone ever to see. And that brings with it a lot of stress, even though you may not cognitively or feel that stress or know that stress. It's there. It's there because, again, there's the idea that lies underneath the surface of, ooh, I could maybe get caught here. And so therefore, with that emotional and mental distress that comes on, life really is out of control for us at that point. So what do we need if we can now come into recovery? It is great structure, great self-care, and a very balanced life, okay? Because we're not just managing our addictive behaviors. What we need to do, and this goes to what Jay was saying before, we need to be changing everything We have to be changing. We cannot continue with the old self. We need to be looking at the new self. That means learning how to be more emotionally connected and vulnerable with people. It means understanding what are our true priorities in life. You know, God, spouse, family, ministry, work. Understanding that those priorities can shift occasionally, be based on whatever the circumstances are. A child who's very sickly is going to go up probably to the top of the list. A work project that's urgent going to go, higher up on the list. But it all has to come back to its God, spouse, family, ministry, work. Have to go back to that order, because in many cases what happens is that crisis comes or that emergency comes and we shift things around and we never shift them back. And we just stay there constantly. And we cannot do that. That goes back to that's the old way. And so what I want to bring out to you here is something that I actually was opening this morning and it came up and it's just perfect for what we're talking about. And that is Ephesians 4:22 through 24. And I promise you, this came up this morning. This is not planned. This is just the way God works. The old self versus the new self. You were taught with regard to your former way of life. Put off your old self. Okay, that's our addictive behavior. That's the darkness that we are hiding. That's the inability to emotionally connect with people, which is being corrupted by deceitful desires. Okay, that's exactly what it is, deceitful desires. To be made new in the attitude of your mind. And that's where a lot of this starts. It starts with understanding that we can really change the way we think. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But to be made with a new attitude of your mind and to be put on and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. I mean, did you hear that last line? To put on the new self. And what's that going to be? Created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. That is changing everything, because before we were far from being godlike. I mean, we are far from being Christ-like in our world. We now have an opportunity to do that, to keep ourselves on the pathway of sanctification more often than not. Yeah, we're all going to fall off. We're going to deviate. We're going to trip, but to stay on it as much as possible, because again, that's the promise that we have. But in order for that promise to take place, we need to make sure that we are making all of the changes that are needed and that we are doing it and maintaining it on a regular basis. So let's look at structure for a moment. What do we mean by structure? Well, first and foremost, definitely is your recovery work, right? That has to be part of what it is, whether you maintain with a support group or you maintain with a sponsor, you continue in therapy. Like I said, some people, after they get the process down, they understand what they need to do. And it's just like maintenance, coming in once a month just to talk about how things are and what they may be struggling in. It's about family. Or have you made the changes and the adjustments so that you are now looking to immerse yourself into your spouse, into your children, into your other members of the family? Or are you still continuing the old habits? And I'll share another quick story with you. I'm actually working on a third book, which is called Going Even Deeper. Um, Teaching men how to do relationships. And the whole concept of it came up by a woman who, a betrayed spouse, who came into me about, I guess it was a couple of years ago, actually about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was working with her husband for almost a year, and he had been doing really well. He was struggling with pornography. He had been sober that whole time. He really starting to understand the change of the heart, but she wasn't moving back to him, which again, it was a year. I understand it takes sometimes longer. But I just wanted to get a sense of where she was. So I brought her into my office to talk to her about it. And I go, tell me what's going on? Why are you feeling challenged? Because I'm seeing growth. And she sat up and she sat to the edge of the couch and leaned over at me and said, for years, my husband's been looking at pornography when we've been married. And I've always had a hint that something like that was going on because his desire for sex had really died down a great deal. But he would always deny. He'd say, no, that's not true. He was lying to me. And he goes, and now today, a year into treatment, you and he are saying that he's no longer looking at pornography. And I said to her, I go, well, that's what he's reporting to me. Yes, that he is not looking at pornography. He goes, okay. He goes, but he still comes home later from work than I would want him to. He still has his phone pretty much attached to his hand. He takes it into the bathroom, even though I don't really like that. And I've told him. He doesn't really spend as much time with me and the kids as I want to. I still don't feel that really strong connection with him. I see a lot of the old guy still there. But what you're telling me is the difference between the old guy and the new guy, the only change I see is that he's telling me he's no longer looking at pornography. But the old guy did that too. So why should I believe the new guy? And it was like, you know what? It was like I got hit with a ton of bricks that day. I mean, it was, I don't think I've ever felt more stupid in my entire life as I did that day and listening to her. But that really, it demonstrated the need to go beyond treating just our addiction, to be making sure that are we being outwardly focused? Are we being curious about our spouses and our families? Are we, taking that time to become the spiritual leaders of our home? Just getting rid of not rid of the addiction, but managing addiction is not enough. And it all comes back to, okay, once you learn to manage it, do you have that structure? And do you have that self-care, that discipline that you need? So when it comes back to the family, are you invested in God? Are you invested? Are you doing more in your way of continuing to strengthen and nurture the relationship between you and Christ, right? That's critical. That's part of our structure. And I know, it's like the idea of, well, always used to get up at, 6:30 in the morning. Well, went through my recovery, still get up at 6:30 in the morning. And the excuse is, I really don't have time to pick up something and talk about it. My day is full. It's like, well, have you thought about maybe getting up at 6:10? You know, why not change things? If you really desire it, why not do it? But see, that goes again about the heart. That what, I've made the changes I need to make, that I needed to make, which means I need to put lust and control my lust. But I don't really make the change that transforms the man. And again, I say men, and I understand women struggle with this also, but I work exclusively with men. So again, please forgive my pronouns and what I use here. But it becomes that idea of, do you want a true transformation? Do you want everything to be different? And therefore, I need to be able to make new positive habits, because the old habits, for the most part, were very destructive. But we also need to, in our recovery and structure, it to be real. And what I mean by that is not to pretend that we got it all together. Yeah, I've gone through the the process. I understand it. I'm more in tune with, myself and mindful. But you know what? We're going to struggle. We're all going to struggle. And why are we going to struggle? We're going to struggle because, again, the idea of being drained mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, we're all going to happen. And when that does happen and you're struggling, are you just going to say, oh, it's okay, I'm just kind of having, I'm having a bad day, no, I really don't feel like going to that group tonight. I'm just a little tired and exhausted. Or are you going to say, hey, you know what? I'm struggling today and I need to talk to somebody about it. Go back to my client, Ted, who had the relapse, right? What if he would have, when that first started and he's playing around on the internet and he's right on the edge, what would have happened if he would have called me or called somebody in one of his groups? I mean, we don't know what would have ultimately happened, but I'll tell you this, it would have probably lowered the risk of him acting out and therefore would have prevented him from crushing his wife's heart again. Because again, you got this idea of, okay, yeah, she's of the mindset, wow, we're on a new pathway, we have a new life, everything's good, we're going to be fine. And all of a sudden it's like, she hits a pothole. Actually, it's more like a sewer, a manhole. It just falls into that sewer. And that's where she is right now. She's in a bad place. And we're going to have to see how that all plays out as she continues to do her work. But to be real for ourselves, to be able to say, yeah, you know what? It's not a good day. I need to do something about it. Not versus out, I'm just going to suck it up. I'm just going to keep going. That's not going to work for that. Also, there's no need to really keep up with other people's expectations at times. And what I mean by that is, the idea that, you know, there's so much work you should be doing in different areas, okay? Are you doing enough recovery work? Are you doing enough work in your relationship with God? Are you doing enough work with the family? I've seen way too many times where there is a lot of overload that is going on, especially from a recovery standpoint, where guys are doing everything, pulling everything in. And it makes me, I sit down and I talk with them and I say, okay, so tell me I know what you've learned, but what are you implementing? And you get a very different answer. Before, if I ask them what you learned, they can rattle off so much. What are you implementing? And you get most of the time, well, I'm implementing learning more. That's good. I don't want to ever stop learning. I want to continue insight. 90, anybody of you folks who have followed me, you understand that I believe insight is 80% of what we need to do and do it on a regular basis. Because again, if I know why I think, feel, and act the way I do, I'm empowered to be able to make and keep those changes. But if I'm just doing the insight and I'm not putting it into practice, then you know what? I'm not really following through on recovery, and I'm cheating myself. The other aspect of being real is don't try to be a social butterfly. Like, I got to be out there and I got to be around all these different people all the time. Again, that wears you out also. If you're tired and you're drained and you're saying, you know what, today I need some rest, then say, hey, I'm going to take some rest. If I feel like, oh, but you know what, I've been really isolated lately, I haven't been out, then make sure you're getting out. But in order to be able to do that, you got to be able to take some time. And this is where the self-care comes in, where we're going to go to next, to take the time to slow everything down and say, how am I doing? How am I doing mentally today? Am I focused? Do I have a lot of racing thoughts? fantasies kind of kicked in, and maybe they don't have to be sexual fantasies. They could be other types of fantasies. You know, how am I doing emotionally? Have my mood shifted? You know, do I feel different now than I did before? How am I doing physically? You know, and that's always a good one that you sit there physically and you realize and you say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I got this like little knot in the back of my neck that you may not have been aware of until you sat there. Well, guess what? That little thing there, that nagging pain that you're not really aware of, that starts to drain you and deplete you, which again raises the likelihood of perhaps acting out. So we need to be able to look at that. And then spiritually, how am I doing in my walk with God? Do I feel close today? Do I feel distant? If I feel distant, okay, I know it's me, it's not him. So why am I distant? What is it I'm struggling with? So we need to be able to take care of that stuff. Um, of course, you know, self-care is always about the things, you know, making sure we're taking care of our body, doing our dental appointments and doing our physicals and exercising, all of that, you know. Um, but it also means, you know, that we're going to treat ourselves and our body in a very healthy manner, that we're going to take time for that health. And that then leads me to routines, okay, that we're establishing routines. And I know, you know what, people like, oh, I hate routines, don't want, but when you deal with addictions, routines are required in order to keep that ability to maintain your self-care and to keep your structure. So I mean, if you look at one of the biggest issues that many people face, is regarding sleep. Okay, it's about, you know, it's trying to get that regular sleep time. And you know, there's so many people who, you know, it's like, oh, I'm a night owl, I've always been a night owl. Well, I think what is said in here, if I'm not mistaken, is that to be made new in the attitudes of our minds. So if I keep telling myself I'm a night owl, I'm going to be a night owl. If I start to make some sorts of adjustments, like, you know what, I think I'm going to try to go to bed 10 minutes earlier, 15 minutes earlier than I normally do. And I do that for several weeks. And then, you know what, I think I'm going to try to go to bed 15 minutes earlier again, because I know it's better for me to be ready in the morning than it is on the back end. See, those are the things about renewing your mind, that you can stop telling yourself, well, this is what I am, and instead to be able to say, what can I be? So therefore, it's looking at that and saying, okay, I can make changes in my pattern. Um, Need routines for increasing the uh, productivity. As I said, my one client, right? He working at home now and way too much time in between. He realized, he said to me, he goes, yeah, you know, he goes, I put in 10 hours a day and work. He goes, I get most of my work done in 6. The rest of the time it's like chatting with people and this and that. And he goes, now I understand that I can be a lot more productive with that. And oh, by doing that, cutting it down, oh, guess what? Now I have more opportunity to go back to the gym, or to, you know, plan that date night with my wife, or to go and see my kids' soccer games, or whatever it may be. But we need to be able to continue to develop those kind of routines. Routines also prevent you from procrastinating. Okay, I know what I need to accomplish, and I understand some people don't like lists. Some people are very intimidated by lists. I love lists. List there, cross it off, cross it off, cross it off, because it gives me a sense of accomplishment. I've been able to do something and get things done, because I know there are many times I haven't had a list, and I will do a bunch of stuff, but at the end of the day, if I walk out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't do this. What did I do today? I didn't do anything today. And that's, wait, stop. I look back and I said, no, actually, you know what? I accomplished a lot, but all I'm focused on is what I didn't do. The other aspect is to plan for temptations. Okay. that part of our self-care. Do you have a plan for when things should go awry? And I'll give you an example. I just got off a session. I just got done with a session with a client who had an affair partner for about 20 years. It was one of those on-off things, they wouldn't see each other for 4 or 5 years, then they'd get together. They lived in the same town, and then, it was sporadic. But since he's been doing the work together, and he hasn't seen her at all, and I was talking to him today about it. I was like, so what happens if you run across her? And he's like, I don't know. Goes, I guess we'll sit and we'll have a conversation and we'll just start catching up, and then I'll let her know that no, but I can't do anything. I said, wow, man, you're not just sitting on the ledge. You're dangling off. You're hanging on by your hand if you go there with that. He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, think about it. You're sitting here and you're going to have this conversation with her and start talking to her about how are things, whatever. Let me tell you, the neurochemicals are going to start stirring in your head. And although it's the last thing in the world you want to do, you may find yourself gravitating to her. What would be another plan? And he said, well, he goes, I would just hate to just ignore her. I mean, I don't want to just walk away and be rude. I go, wow. I go, you're doing a lot of thinking about her. What would your wife want you to do? He goes, oh, my wife would want me to walk away. Just silent for a little while. And he goes, I think I got my plan. I go, yeah, that's what you need to do. You got to walk away. And now he never thought about that. He didn't think about temptation. I use myself as an example. When you're in sessions and you're doing 8, 9 people talking to folks every day about this heavy stuff, right? And I get done at the end of the day, and I usually kind of stop by Publix, maybe 3, 4 times a week on my way home. I know I'm drained. I know I'm emotionally drained. I'm mentally drained, probably a little physically drained. I mean, if I pull into that parking lot, I'm like, Lord, let's bounce those eyes. Got to bounce those eyes, okay? I got to see women as children of God and nothing more. That's what I want to see. I've already prepared myself. I've done what I said here, right? About, the mind, about creating a new attitude in my mind. I'm not leaving it to chance. We can't. So instead, what I do is I go in, and now I'm prepared. And so therefore, if I see a woman, it's like, oh, she's very attractive. Child of God. Keep walking. We don't plan enough for the temptations and the urges that can come up, which again can cause a lot of issues for us down the line. The other aspect is, I'm going to go back a little bit to what I was talking about before about, to be true to yourself. And what I mean by that is be honest about what you feel, about your emotions. If you think about it, one of the reasons we got into this problem in the first place is that we didn't do a very good job in being able to sit with our emotional and mental distress. We just didn't want to sit with pain. So our inner child, which is what I believe in, found a way to distract us. And for us, it was sex that we used to distract ourselves. If we don't start the process of being able to sit with that pain, to feel that pain, and then be able to be vulnerable enough to express it instead of holding it in, and what that does, it builds resentment, builds bitterness. And over time, as that builds, adding into being drained, add into getting hit with an emotional trigger, and it all adds up to relapse. We need to be true to ourselves. We need to be able to say, you know what, I got to be different. And part of the thing of being different is I will sit with that pain, I will process it, and process it means, okay, I feel this, but what's reality? What's real? Because what you feel and what is real are usually two very, very different things. Okay. So if you don't do that over time, what's going to happen is hostilities are going to continue to build, and they're going to wind up leading to acting out. And I also want to talk to you about a balance too, because as I said to you before, I see all these guys who throw so much into, their recovery work, but I don't see it being played out in life. We need to understand that finding a balance is a process for us. And that balance, just like our priorities, could shift as time goes on. But learning to live in recovery, it takes time. Guess what? You have your whole life to do this. You have your whole life to learn how to balance things. You have your whole life to learn how to juggle priorities along the way. It's always going to be, life is unpredictable, correct? Well, okay. So therefore, I'm not going to stay rigid to my structure. I know it's going to shift and, you know, turn, but I need to be able to adhere to it and realize, oh, you know what? It's a little off. Is it okay that it's off? Can I go a while without not doing something? Maybe. Okay. Because something else is taking its place. That's fine. Like I said, we're not looking for perfection. Okay, at 7 a.m. I'm doing this, 7:35 I do this. That's not what we're looking for. That's not living at all. But being sober is taking it one day at a time. If one day, just today, just today. I know, I'm sure some of you guys, I don't know if you also go to like SA meetings and things like that, but, people get up and, oh yeah, I've been sober for 3 months. I've been sober for 3 years. I've been sober for 30 years. I'm not a big fan of counting. It's just me. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just not a big fan of it because it's just today. That's what I should be focusing on, just today. I have a client who I worked with. I see him maybe twice a year now. He's been sober for 5 years, and he goes to his SA meetings. He goes to a couple of them every week, and he'll get up and he'll say, I am so-and-so. I've been sober one day. That's it. He focuses on one day at a time, and it becomes so much easier because it keeps it very top of mind for him there. So as I finish up what I have to say here, I think for a game plan, as we said, is to look and see what are those good, healthy things you need in your life from a recovery standpoint, from a family standpoint, from a standpoint of God in your life, from a standpoint of your work, from a standpoint of your fun activities that you want to engage in, and being able to put that there. Understand that also, sometimes you got to get the pruners out and you got to cut away some of the dead stuff that's just not being productive anymore. And that could be very challenging, but it is necessary. Also, give yourself kind of like a day every once in a while to kind of just reset. Today's an evaluation day. You're going to go back and I'm going to evaluate everything I've been doing. What's working? What's not working? What am I getting a benefit out? I had a client who was a part of his one support group for almost 2 years. And he said to me, this was about 3 months ago, he goes, I got to tell you, I don't feel like I'm getting anything out of it. Because I know I need to be there, but I'm not getting anything out of my group. I go, you know what? You don't need to be there, but you need to be in a group. But it doesn't have to be that group. And we found him a new group, and he's loving it. He's loving it. See, therefore, again, you got to prune and start to make those adjustments. And the other thing I would strongly encourage you to do, I mean, I strongly encourage you, journal. Just keep journaling. You don't have to write pages every day, but you know what? Just a paragraph, a couple lines, just journal. Because again, what it does, it gets you to, as I said before, right? We don't want to keep this, or harbor resentments and things inside. We want to talk about our feelings, want to talk about our emotions, and sometimes it's better to put them out on paper first before we go and we bring them there. So, I mean, I really strongly urge you to do that along the way. And Jay, that's about all I got for you today.
Eddie, thank you so much. As usual, tremendous points, illustrations. I think there's a lot of your remarks we can feast on and incorporate into our lives.